All right, we're going to get started. Good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar. It's brought to you by FACS Institute for County Government with support from the University of Florida IFAS. This is actually our last webinar of the year, which is not a bad thing. It's time for 2020 to probably take a seat, but we'll start back in the first week of January. But today we're going to stay with our technology solutions theme. And talk about how one local government is using a unique internet platform to help reactivate its local economy during the pandemic. And I think generally speaking, the public often measures the effectiveness of a local government by how responsive it is to its needs. And this response time, I think, gets compressed during emergencies like natural disasters and hurricanes. But local governments have never experienced the type of emergency associated with COVID-19 in terms of its impact on the community, how broad it is in terms of its impact on individuals and businesses, and its duration. In other words, it's like, when will this COVID storm end? But by necessity, I think COVID-19 has forced counties and cities to be more nimble, to stretch their normal operating procedures, their normal way of thinking in ways that can meet the pressing needs of the community. And you got to do this within a really compressed time frame. And then above all, there's this whole overarching need to be, I think, readily transparent to the community. Our presenters today are from the city of St. Petersburg. While they're not a member of the Florida Association of Counties, they are welcome to join. But I want to thank them for taking the time to be with us today. And they're going to talk about how, when faced with individual and small business needs created by COVID, and this is really before CARES Act was even passed, how they were able to partner with a company called OpenGov, which is a fully integrated web-based enterprise resource planning system built for state and local governments. The way we had to do this is we had to pre-record the presenters because some of the presenters weren't going to be able to participate live today. So we have a pre-recorded presentation, and then we have two presenters, Scott Campbell from OpenGov, and then Sarah Hugart, who's the Economic Development Specialist with the City of St. Petersburg. I've seen this presentation. It's really neat. I think they've got a great and amazing story to share. And so if you've got questions, put them in the chat feature or in the Q&A, and then we'll get to them at the very end. So with that, Becky, you want to go ahead and just start the clip, and then we'll get going.
Hello, this is David Reeves. I'm the president of OpenGov. Today, we're going to be discussing how to do modernizing on a dime, how St. Petersburg, Florida moved quickly to save small businesses by rethinking how they work. I'm joined today by the St. Petersburg team. And Sarah and Jessica, if you'd like to introduce yourselves.
Hello, I'm Ann Fritz. I'm the Chief Financial Officer of the City of St. Petersburg, Florida, and I look forward to presenting this today to you.
Hi, I'm Sarah Hugart. I'm an Economic Development Specialist with the City of St. Petersburg and the St. Pete Greenhouse.
Hello, I'm Jessica Eilerman, the Small Business Liaison at the City of St. Petersburg.
As many of you know, OpenGov has been around for 8 years now, and we really have always had this vision of becoming the one source of truth for governments in a modern cloud software solution. We're very proud. We have over 400 customers now using our budgeting and planning. So we are the best-selling budgeting solution and planning solution in government. The really focal point of our company now is to make sure that all of our permitting and licensing, all reporting, our budget and planning, our transparency platform, our performance dashboards are all going to closely integrate with our ERP and our financials module. So we have 24 modules of technology now, so we've grown quite a bit from the old days when we kind of grew up doing a lot of reporting and transparency. A lot of the vision is that what a lot of our customers have asked us over time and said, rather than have to integrate to their ERP systems, which they viewed as inadequate and really hard to get data out of and make data-driven decisions, that they would really prefer us to kind of be that one source of truth. So that's really been our vision. We have over 100 engineers now building the OpenGov ERP cloud, and we've spent $145 million so far to build it. So we're very committed to being the future of government. And for those of you who don't know much about us, I mean, our real vision here is that we think the whole government sector has been kind of underserved by a lot of these on-premise, 25, 30-year-old legacy systems. And we think it's a shame that you have so much good technology on your iPhones and, your Netflix and all the kind of modern, online banking and things you enjoy in your personal life. And we don't see any reason why when you go to work as public servants that you shouldn't enjoy the same type of usability and efficiencies that you enjoy, outside of work. So that's kind of our vision. That's kind of our mission.
Where the city was several months ago, first of all, for the city, we need to be able to identify our community funding needs and allocate funds efficiently and transparency. One of the greatest burdens of local government is the allocation of scarce resources. And that is one of our biggest challenges that we have. In order to make that happen, we actually needed to rewire our workflows. We had to become more agile and collaborative so that we can serve our community better. And today we're gonna talk about our St. Pete Fighting Chance Fund. Okay, when the coronavirus pandemic shutdown began, the city had to shut down, many businesses, restaurants, bars, etc. We are located in Florida, so we are very heavy on tourism. And so we have a lot of service type of businesses that had to get very quickly shut down, and a lot of our citizenry and our businesses were in dire economic straits. So we, Mayor Kreisman and the team and the city council formed the St. Pete's Fighting Chance Fund. And the goal of that was to reactivate the economy by providing grants to businesses and affected individuals. What the result of that is $6 million distributed to businesses and $500,000 to individuals. That's the bottom line, what we've been able to do. So what we did and Jessica, you could kind of go over this page a little bit as well, is we had to kind of rework our entire process of the evaluation, the grantee, the grantor, as well as all the way through the payment cycle. So I'm going to let Jessica give an overview of the phases that we had to do for the project.
Thanks, Anne. Basically, on March 17th, we went from knowing that a growing pandemic was influencing the way that we operated our lives and conducted business and directly impacted our community. When March 17th happened, there were government mandates that came down from the state, and then quickly thereafter, some county and city mandated closures were occurring. And so right away, we knew we needed to kind of get into action with how we could help provide a lifeline for our businesses that were being directly impacted by those government mandates. So that was March 17th. March 19th, we held our first discussion with administration to start to formulate what type of program we could bring to our businesses to provide that lifeline, and really made a lot of headway developing a program. And so from March 19th, for the next couple weeks, we prepared that program. And on April 9th, we launched the first phase of the St. Pete Fighting Chance Fund. We started with an approach, what I like to call a bullseye. That center approach was the businesses that were directly impacted by those government mandated closures, and those employees that were either being furloughed or unfortunately losing their jobs because of those closures. So that first phase really targeted on that group of businesses. We had 2 additional phases, and on the second phase, we expanded requirements and eligibilities, so more of our area businesses could participate in the program. When we got to the third phase, we really opened it up at that point because we had been in the pandemic long enough to know these are long-lasting changes, and it was really affecting basically all of our small businesses. So we took that phased approach from how we were trying to serve and meet our goal with the program. And that interfaced with the development of the tool and the application and process itself. So in phase 1, we looked at that all the departments. It was a cross-departmental effort, a collaborative approach, and we walked through what it needed to look like. And we actually came to market utilizing a different tool. And what we found throughout phase one, that there were a lot of shortcomings, both from an internal perspective and an external perspective. So as we were preparing that second round or second phase to widen the eligibilities, we also took it as an example to say, what else could we be doing better and make this a good experience for our citizenry and the employees working on the program. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in detail later, but it is an important process as we went through this timeline. The other ability that helped us kind of get to the market quickly is that we are very fortunate to have a small business and entrepreneurship center, of which a variety of the economic and workforce development staff work on collaboratively with Chamber of Commerce staff. We cooperate that space together. And we had a lot of existing relationships, both with small businesses and with a variety of, actually almost all of our business associations and districts and Main Street organizations. So we were able to activate those relationships once we built this process and really take it to market from outreach and all those relationships we had existing, as well as our marketing and communication, both from the greenhouse, the city of St. Pete, and then all of our partner networks.
I'm going to cover this a little bit because I think it's interesting to see, because in order to process grants and grants for economic opportunities, you can see our the past, all of the steps involved, and sometimes it actually involved many steps that were circular, that it had to go through phases and then back forward. So we had it was a paper-based workflow. We had a lot of the application process, was all paper. All the way through the check process. We sent out physical paper checks in the mail. And with the pandemic, obviously, we wanted to reduce the human touches to that because, even getting checks out in the mail were going to be problematic. And especially if businesses were shut down, they might not even have access to their mail. So we had to rethink all of this. And this is what was so great in the collaboration, is that we were able to kind of form this team that kind of relooked at everything. It can kind of reinvent very quickly. And that's why I wanted to mention it was an agile method. We kind of came, we'd start and go a little bit forward and then say, hey, how about if we do this? And we went backwards and then tried something else. So, that methodology really worked in the development of this process, because it's not linear. And the development of this process is certainly, because it involves so much collaboration among so many departments, it made us rethink how we do everything. And so, we can see then what we've gone through from a 3 to 4 week turnaround cycle. For individuals, we were turning these around in 2 days, where we actually, with the time that the individual applied with the information through the payment. And for the individuals, we even did the payments using the kind of the quick pay apps. We used JP Morgan Quick Pay with Zelle, and we actually, provided security, because we had a code that we would create, and we auto-generated that code that went to the approved email, and they had to have that code in order to bring down those funds. So we need to make sure that we had accountability in there, but we also then wanted to make it convenient so that the individual received those funds as fast as they could. And personally, I received several emails just thanking us. I couldn't believe how fast we were able to turn that around. Each day we were actually processing these daily, and I actually was the approver for these payments that were going out, and I could watch it. I could watch the approval, and sometimes within 5 minutes, I could see that the individuals had already drawn down their money. So it was really kind of a great way to see how fast the new technologies can work, not only on the submission process, but all the way through the payment process. So, I think we learned a lot that we can do a lot, we can do a lot more, and we can have these digitally enabled workflows that actually automate those, not only for the front end, but definitely all the way through the process. So, for a 1 week turnaround for businesses, I know, other governments kind of did similar ones to this, but we're very proud of the turnaround that we've been able to accomplish in these programs and make sure that the interaction, was done quickly with the affected individuals and businesses.
So Ann and Jessica kind of covered the overall goal, timeline, and workflow of the Fighting Chance program. And of course, the first step in making this happen is for an IT function to begin to understand our organization and our needs. We had, I think, a week time frame to make the decision to shift our operation for that phase 2. So we needed to be sure to clarify and identify the factors and internal realities that needed to be addressed in order to be most efficient in getting funds to the individuals and businesses as quickly and as efficiently as possible, like Ann mentioned. At the time, there were external pressures needing to produce a system that worked. We were going to be serving individuals and businesses who were finding roadblocks with other programs. So we had to be confident in choosing a platform that could meet our needs and concerns. So we knew at the time what our must-haves were. First, we needed an application with an electronic upload for applicant supporting files that also included a cloud-based and/or fully functional digital workflow. That's because a traditional paper application wouldn't have been feasible at the time. We were all working remotely as a team. We were also expecting thousands of applications to come in. So that's why we identified this. Also, affordability to enable maximum funding available to applicants. As Jessica mentioned, we had the limited budget of about 6.8 million, which would have funded only the predicted amount of businesses at the time. So there was minimal room for additional cost. Also, ease of implementation. Like I mentioned, we had an immediate turnaround time and needed to be sure this could be successfully launched and quickly implemented. Ease of use for constituents. Again, people were already overwhelmed with the other field systems in place at the time, so it was imperative to offer a seamless process. Lastly, security concerns and data record and retention. This was one of our biggest obstacles, was addressing our need for security measures and protocols. We really needed to get our IT team on board to address the concerns and needs to be able to move forward with this platform. So I had a unique role with our department where I had a clear understanding of the operational needs and the overall scope of the project. Every department has that staff member, right? The ones with years of knowledge and processes and procedures, but never have the time or energy to really put it all down on paper. So the picture on the right is a whiteboard representation of the inner workings of my mind when considering every step of grant management process. Luckily, the OpenGov team stepped in like our nice and shiny armor who helped, who also had the background in government processes and it really helped guide us in translating these complex processes into an electronic format. So how did we create a simple process workflow for applicants? Improving our grant management process through incorporating a technology management program has always been a personal goal of mine since starting with the department. So luckily the thought process was already in the work. It was imperative to consider every process within that grant management workflow, every department that's involved to be able to create the most efficient system to take place. The PLC platform with OpenGov allowed us to simply automate the entire workflow for the applicant. So the image on the left is the completed external product, the customer portal, where all of these complex processes are kind of packaged into a simple front-facing product. The applicant simply needed to locate the program they're applying for, create a login, and submit their electronic application. And as soon as the applicant submitted their complete application, no other action was required on their end. Whereas in the past, we required an applicant to physically drop off their application packet in person, return to the office after approval to execute a grant agreement, and then we had to direct the applicant to register themselves as a vendor with the city to receive payment. So these were all needless manual steps that were taken out, and it really made a seamless process for our citizens in order to offer the best experience during such a stressful time. The key to effectiveness and efficiency of this program was definitely process improvement, improving both the processes of our organization's internal management, but also improving our communication and trust with the citizens that we serve. Automating the previous grant process and removing unnecessary manual steps was the key to improve efficiency and real-time communication with who we were serving. And this is what was most surprising about the whole process, the user interface and feasibility, both for the front-end applicants, but also for the back-end users, our staff. This was another major component to why we were able to successfully launch in such a short time frame. We had approximately about 25 staff members total assigned to this project at the launch date, And I needed to quickly learn how the interface works and be able to successfully relay that knowledge to our staff. And I was able to draft up user instructions specific for individual roles, whole tutorials for staff, all within 2 days. We had some staff members who had never even worked outside of a word processing application who were immediately able to operate within the program, but most importantly, feel confident in the usability. The last thing we wanted at that time was adding stress on our staff by implementing a new complicated process.
So you're going to hear us a lot talk about how do we serve our constituents in a timely, effective, efficient, better way, and how do we manage our organizational structure for success. And so that's really what we're going to be talking about specifically here are those internal items and the external. And what I hope you see as I go through this is that they're so connected, right? You can't do this without connecting the internal and the external because one influences the other so closely. So a couple big takeaways is we were so dependent on paper processes internally. Like, you have to print and mail in by a certain post date. And that was just the way it had been done. And as Sarah mentioned, we've all always said, oh, on the dream board, we would like to update these processes, but busy trying to do good work and you don't always get to all of those things. So this opportunity with the speed and efficiency that we needed to deliver a confident product that could react to, members of our community that were desperate and confused by all the other programs. And Sarah, the frustration level was so high. Sarah mentioned that we just wanted to come out the gate with something really good where they felt like it was a good experience and that they weren't in this archaic process of how government just typically does things. And so it was really an amazing experience from the internal perspective to watch our team be able to go through this online platform and do so with ease and trust of security and privacy, and then yet all the steps for our compliance are being met without burdening the applicant or the constituent. So that was a huge piece of this transition for us. Truly transformational. I'll speak for my own department in economic and workforce development. We have a cadre of different incentives we offer. Almost all of them have been paper driven or an archaic kind of online approach. Trying this, piloting this, seeing how it worked. We have a goal now to have all of our incentive programs work in this way. And yet we're serving, the constituents and meeting that need, but we're also working smarter as a city team cross-departmentally. So those are huge assets for us. Another big takeaway was really that quickness of payment. So if we wouldn't have gotten together and kind of, as Anne was saying, with the agile process, nothing was straightforward. We were doing a lot of different things at multiple points at the same time. And it was really in that kind of innovation and talking through this process that we were like, okay, what else could we do for the payment? And, Anne and her team in finance were like, well, let's go with Zelle. I mean, I think that's one of the first times I've ever been involved in something like that from, a government perspective, to have this kind of immediacy of a turnaround for a payment process that immediately helped our residents and citizens. And then I think kind of going, now that's some of the internal, and I do want to double click for a minute on that organizational structure and management. It's twofold what this has presented to us. Number one, we can do things electronically and be very secure in the process and the safety of the information and the platforms that we're using. Number two, we can manage staff and our bandwidths in a way that is so much more productive than going in the way it's always been done. And I think that is a huge asset because we have amazing talent in our city, and we if we're burning everyone out because there's a process that's just the way it's been, and we're not willing to get in there and say we can tweak this and make it better, and just be responsive. And so that was a huge asset, was really seeing that transition of our whole team. And then also, again, that cross-departmental teamwork. This was so awesome from an internal perspective to work so closely with all of these other departments. And together we came to these determinations. And now we see how we can replicate this in other areas. And I think that that's a huge gain when you're looking at just city, and our management structure of how we want to produce and provide services to our constituents. From the external perspective, jumping kind of over to that side, all of those internal wins directly influence the external experience. Applicants are getting better information in a faster way. We're able to actually engage with them in real time instead of trying to figure out, hey, who am I supposed to call? And now I'm not getting a call back. And now I feel like maybe my application didn't get submitted right. We were able to just transform that constituent experience. We were also able to ensure that, again, that security of information was in there and that there was a transparency. So, it's no secret there is mistrust with government agencies, and it's widespread. And when you're able to, in real time, be able to get reporting and transparency metrics that are just there, and it doesn't take 2 weeks to pull down data and run through a manual report and then create a visualization, you are automatically getting to a place of more trust. And that was a huge external win for us with this. And transparency is key in our finance department, and Anne has been a champion of that for us. So I'm going to kick it back over to Anne to talk a little bit more about our transparency efforts.
Again, this is a kind of the front end of the process, where the fighting chance applicants went through, and they handed their, in terms of looking at the transparency, you can see the approved businesses round one and approved individuals round one. What we wanted to do is we had to kind of visualize what we're doing, and what we were able to do from the finance end is, because of using the tool within OpenGov, we were able to then daily get a file of the approved applications. And then along with that came the actual vendor file. So remember that slide in the beginning, we had this very lengthy process that was circular, that the applicant had to do it all in paper. And then after they got approved, they had to go register as a vendor to the city and upload W-9s and, or mail in W-9s. We made that all kind of a one-stop shop. So we were able then to take that information each day and import it into our enterprise system for payment. And then what we did then is we then took the same files out after payment, and then we utilized, the city finance has been utilized in the OpenGov tool for several years for our transparency from a financial reporting standpoint, that we use it for quite a different methodologies and reporting within finance. So what we were able to do then is we worked with the team then on economic development, and we developed, what kind of reporting do you need? Because we can connect this all together, that we already have the processes in place with the financial reporting side, and we can connect it and we can visualize utilizing the tool. So you can see, we did a couple of just high level ones here. It's just kind of, we wanted to see where the money was deployed by zip code. And this is kind of one of our really important, I think Jessica will probably touch on that more, is we wanted to see where the money was deployed throughout the city. So we actually then were able to then, as we took the payment file, we were able to turn it within the OpenGov tool through their new Explorer tool. We were able to use that and actually create the mapping effect of all of those. And that was nearly instantaneous. It was very, it was a small amount of additional work to kind of pull it up into OpenGov, but certainly was very doable. And we were able to get nearly real time, because we were sending out these payments daily, because we wanted these payments to get out to the affected individuals and businesses as soon as possible. And you can see then we did the individual stimulus by zip. And again, we were able to then take it to the map view for those individuals, so we can see where those actual citizens live and where that money was deployed, throughout the city. And what you see, it was very well dispersed. It wasn't one particular area that got all of the money. So you can see that was very important, to the community, to make sure that all of those affected throughout the city that money was distributed.
And I would say from a transparency and reporting standpoint, these couple of slides that Ann just went through are just so important for so many ways, from that internal external approach. So internally, we looked at this information really every couple days, and while we could follow where the individual pin drops were falling and the business pin drops were falling, we could see trends. And it was very important to us that we had an equitable distribution of these funds. We knew we didn't have enough money to serve every business. You already heard about our approach, kind of starting with the most impacted and growing each time. So we knew the need was there, but making sure that it's equitably distributed throughout the community was just of utmost importance. So a way for our team internally to monitor it was using these tools, and then we could deploy additional tactics. So an example would be Sarah and I would review something and maybe be like, oh, well, we're starting to see maybe there's not as much happening here. Let's deploy some additional communications efforts. Let's get with our marketing department. What business associations do we know in that area where we need to send an email saying, hey, let's just make sure this is in front of our businesses in your geography. We were also, from an external standpoint, able to do two things: report in real time to City Council and show their districts, so they could also use that information, be empowered, and say, hey, I don't have as many in my district. I want to make sure I'm getting out there and I'm helping communicate directly to my constituents and business owners in my district. And the kind of second real takeaway there is it helps with any perceptions or feelings that maybe that wasn't for, maybe this program isn't for me, or maybe I'm not going to be able to get through to this program and it's only for this person or that person. We tried really hard to make sure that through the use of visualizations like this in real time to say, we do see a gap in applications and awards in this area, and we need to get in there and really get in the grassroots to let folks know this is a program for them too.
Well, if time allows, if you could share, Stephanie, so I can pull up and we can actually just go straight out to OpenGov and share where we, you know, what the city has done. And what I want to do is I'm going to pull up here. This is live. So this is the OpenGov platform. And what you do is we go straight into the reports, okay? And I want to look at our dashboards. Okay, so these are the dashboards then that we developed for Fighting Chance. And you can see these are, you know, as payments came in, these amounts were updated. We tracked, you know, the zip codes. We looked at the phases. We looked at the phases by zip code. Then we looked at payments by day. We wanted to see what are the trends. We wanted to see the number of payments by day, the number of the funded businesses. You can see then the individual grants, the brick and mortar payments that came in to phase 3. So we really were able to use this tool. And the wonderful thing is it allowed staff then to drill down and actually do the visualizations that they wanted to see, because the data is under there. Now, what we also use, like when we mentioned the next gen is this is kind of where we showed the completed forms by day. I mean, we just have just a plethora of reporting that was internal and external under here. So, you know, we found then even just under here, we could see here, this is where we visualize then on the map. And then if we wanted to, we're as simple as hitting this, we wanted to look at a bubble or a heat map. We were able to then heat map and really take those areas in effect and see, you know, whether it's the density or the amount. We could really determine then how those distributions were applied. So we really were able to kind of take this tool and kind of manage the process kind of live. And that was really kind of great to see that. And, you know, from my perspective is the transparency and the reporting. This is why I see this as a transformative project. We came together in this kind of like time of need. We had various stakeholders that we were able to do. Believe me, from a financial perspective, I didn't want all those many steps in there, but sometimes you're you deal with what you have in terms of the technology. We were able to take then the OpenGov platform and able to transform the technology without changing our full enterprise system. So that, so that in those business processes, we were able to get through some of those burdens that were paper based, or, and again, a lot of times it just can be, as in change management, it's just people always did it that way. So that's why, this is, I believe, for the future of the city of St. Pete, this is going to set a precedent in how to do technology projects, utilizing an agile method instead of coming up with a list of requirements that's 52 pages long that gets handed off to a technology team who is not part of the business process. It's the business processes coming together along with the technology team, and kind of working right along with them and going forward, going backward, going forward simultaneously without rules. Okay. And really come up with a really new way of doing business, and as I call it, maximize the workarounds and minimize the work effort. Okay. And so these workarounds were kind of technology workarounds that, instead of going through this process linearly, why don't we kind of go through it, linear or a circle? Why don't we utilize the back end technology to do it? And so that's how we did it through this project. Like I said, the banking was great, that whole new process with app. I have so many different ideas on how to eliminate these paper checks, okay, because they cause so much work for us, because especially when we have large departments that have small refund checks. Could you imagine how much work we do to actually, mail out a $5 check, and then they don't cash the check, and then we have all of the reporting requirements for that. So definitely from a financial standpoint, it's a transformative project. And I think from a constituent management, it's a transformative project, that interaction from an application to through that whole application review process and approval, and the contracting. It was great. It was great to see the legal department involved. The legal department, the clerk of council, all of those, those were used to pay all paper that would go in an inter-office envelope, right? And sometimes it took 2 days to get back and a week back. Then they literally would get the email with the notification, and could keep up with the documentation and approvals right within OpenGov, and everybody knew what the status was of those because we could see it. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Jessica and Sarah.
Absolutely great. Thank you, Anna. Just while you have your screen open, do you mind showing off our economic development side? We utilize the stories. If on the left-hand side there, if you go down to the stories board, we were able to ride the coattails of the finance department's data and create a Fighting Chance Fund storyboard. Our administrator wanted to know multiple times a day where we were at on funding, on how many applications we've received. So we were really able to take that data that Ann kind of went over it and put it in a comprehensive, digestible platform here that we're able to even eventually share publicly. So that's the overall goal with with this information, to be able to share with the public.
And just think about, you're getting your report ready for your city council, and you have all these data points that could be written in a narrative, or you'd have to do the back end to support a visualization. And we are able to just produce in a much more effective way, fantastic reports that are visually driven. That's a game changer, really. Especially for lean teams like our economic development team. We're not a huge team, and we want to be showing that data and responsive to city council and citizen concerns and questions, and being able to provide documentation like this without all of the steps of the back end of pulling a report and manually doing these things. It sets you up for success in that conversation as well.
Reiterate, when organizations allow themselves to support technology use such as OpenGov, they can achieve intelligent and integrated improvements. We can identify new opportunities, offer great value to our constituents, and reach whole new levels of productivity. So it's really been a truly valuable process. This wasn't limited to the Fighting Chance Fund. I'm happy to report that other departments within the city were so impressed with our successful launch and management that 2 other departments have also launched their own initiative programs through the platform. Not only that, but from economic development, we're also reviewing our other grant programs that we manage to consider also transitioning into this electronic format. So I'm really excited for that ongoing improvement moving forward.
And again, as most people, you know, especially for the compliance is so very important. While transparency is important, we also have to be compliant and we have to make sure we have accountability. And it's certainly from an audit perspective, all of the visualizations are taken right off data. And so we can drill down right to the data, down to the person. And then we can go back into all of the application data so that we have the transparency for our internal and external auditors to ensure that the whole process has been appropriately managed and in compliance with all the regulations and city policies. We're ready for any questions, and I know we have, you know, from a financial standpoint and then an operational standpoint, I think we'll be glad to hear any questions that you may have. And we're really happy to partner with OpenGov. You know, this was a partnership of this and development process, and, you know, certainly required a unique skill set of those individuals being willing to work so quickly and make changes on the fly and then turn around and go back and make a couple more after that. So certainly this tool allows that to happen, that collaboration and those changes very, very quickly. So we thank you for everything you've done for the city.
On behalf of all of OpenGov, this is David. I just want to thank you and Sarah and Jessica. You guys have been tremendous partner. My team loves working with you all, and really excited that we could help you and do things so quickly. You guys are very innovative, and I think, you know, you're really forward thinking, and that is exemplary for what we want our cities and counties across the country to do. So I want to just give some kudos to all of you for being leaders in your field. And we're looking forward to, you know, the questions, but also long-term partnership. Thank you.
And I also want to thank all the team members of the city. You know, you're only seeing a couple of them here. There's probably, as Jessica said, there's about 25 involved, included many departments: procurement, technology, EcoDev, legal, you know, the city administration. So, you know, just thank you for everybody being involved, and you're really all part of this solution. And I think we're proud of how we've been able to deploy and see it as kind of certain a case study for the future.
Great. We got a lot of questions, and what I'd like to ask, here's what I like about this presentation is twofold. One, to me, it demonstrates how robust yet how adaptable the OpenGov platform is. And then, you know, Sarah, on your side, really the passion of your team and how knowledgeable and dedicated they are. And it seems to me that your team was able to get this up and running really quickly. And so what I would like to hear from both you and Scott is, one, the internal collaboration that took place within the city. And then Anne made a really neat point. She talked about it being agile rather than having, you know, the business development group within the city develop a 52-page report and then hand it over to technology. It looks like y'all work together hand in hand with OpenGov. So can you talk about that process internally? And then Scott, can you talk about how you guys work together in collaboration to make this launch so quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Eric. So as we mentioned from the presentation there, we had a phase one process. We went with a platform at that time that we were familiar with. It was primarily an e-signature platform and not a grant management platform at all. So we learned from our mistakes with that. And luckily we were able to, with those processes that we learned from, able to decide what was needed to build out a better platform. So for our phase two, we had only a week transition to decide on what that would entail. So as Anne mentioned, she already had a previous relationship with OpenGov, fortunately, so they were able to connect with us immediately, and we were able to discuss, you know, what our issues were, what we were looking for within the platform, and how we could successfully implement a grant management platform moving forward. So yeah, we were really excited and fortunate to be able to have that collaborative work. again, bringing in all of those departments, that cross-departmental function. As Ann mentioned, we had all on the same call for the first time in my history with the city. We had our legal team, procurement, finance, economic development, city development. We were all on one call, going over all of these goals and concerns that we needed to address to make sure to launch and implement a new platform. And luckily, OpenGov was able to meet all of those concerns for us.
Absolutely. And from my perspective, you know, the unique thing about this use case was we started after they had already gone through a phase 1 of processing these applications. So it was to our advantage and to our challenge too, to get this done quickly. So to try to turn this around in a week, you know, was a challenge, but we had already something to go off of. So you saw some screens there with their workflows. And the nice thing, you know, with OpenGov is St. Petersburg was already using us for financial transparency. So we kind of had an idea of what their chart structure looked like and the things we need to look at there. But to build their forms and their workflows in OpenGov is all point and click, drag and drop. So unlike traditional software where this might take like a software programmer to build all this, Eric, we were able to get the form up within, you know, a couple days and have that entire workflow, that screen done within a 2 or 3 day period, which was quick. So time to value was key there. And then I remember midstream, I think it was Jessica that had to make adjustments to the form, you know, and she's doesn't really have an IT background, but she could add new fields directly to the form and they could move those workflow steps around on their own. Obviously with not having to go back to IT within St. Pete, but definitely could do it without OpenGov's handholding too. So now, as I mentioned throughout the presentation, they can take this to the next level and use it for all their grants, disbursements, and any other type of workflow automation they need to do.
So it sounds like there was certainly an advantage that you were already working with Ann and had that relationship. If that weren't the case, would it take a lot longer to get up and running, or just a small headway?
We started from scratch with a number of governments, and I know they did the Fighting Chance Fund, which was their own internal funds, but we did a lot with CARES Act too, with state governments, local governments. Another example where we started from scratch was the state of Idaho, and they were one of the first states that went and started dispersing CARES Act out to their local governments. The turnaround time was about the same. It was about a week. The thing was determining the optimal steps in their workflows and getting that set up. But to, you know, having a point and click, drag and drop interface to do that really allows you to get those done quickly. With St. Pete, the big advantage was, you know, when they're looking at the revenue accounts and the revenue streams that you saw on those dashboards, that was a big advantage to having that chart pre-built and having the chart of accounts in OpenGov.
Sarah, can we talk about just operational a little bit? Staffing and that sort of stuff. You know, we talked about sort of some legacy operations that you had, and then you've shifted to this. Does that mean you've had to redo some sort of standard operating procedures? I know, you know, people are working remotely anyway, so those procedures are changing a little bit, but are you having to redo all of that, those SOPs internally to accommodate this platform?
Not necessarily, no. I mean, that's a good question. We already had a manual workflow in place, for example, grant execution. So with grant execution, that has to go through 4 different departments. And luckily, I mean, with OpenGov, we were able to map that all out, and they helped us transcribe that into that digital format. Like Scott mentioned, I mean, their program is plug and play, ready to go. We already had an application and a workflow in place. They helped us translate that into their system fairly easily. And like Scott mentioned, we're able to now create our own forms ourselves without needing to go back to OpenGov and having our hands held any longer. Now that we understand how the platform works, we can continue implementing new programs and as we go along. So it's a really exciting interface and platform to continue to build out long term.
So I'm assuming that the community feedback has got to be positive, because I spoke at the beginning, you know, one measure of a local government is how quick and responsible and nimble it is. So I'm assuming that the feedback has been positive from the individual recipients to the business recipients, correct? So I'm assuming you've raised the bar kind of here now, right? So the expectations, this is kind of the floor now. So again, I'm going to talk about internal stuff. You're, you were able to communicate in real time. At least that's what Ann was saying in terms of people getting money and stuff. Is there any anticipation, or was there, of staff being overburdened, like they're having to respond too quick, just like you would get an email, like I got to respond to this email, but are now that you got this nimble, quick process in place, is that going to be a potential burden for staff to be, for lack of a better word, the phrase is overworked?
Yeah, that's a good issue to bring up. Definitely during our first phase, we realized the importance of that issue. With the platform that we initially launched, we had staff that were working 14-hour days. It just wasn't sustainable. With OpenGov, the efficient process that we were able to implement dramatically reduced that staff need. As far as the grant management need itself. Before with the older platform, emails were coming in individually to individual staff, whereas we were able to direct that constituent service directly and operate that efficiently. So it absolutely took 100% stress off of our internal staff with this efficient management program. So I hope that helps to answer.
Yeah, but I'm assuming that most of the funds have been dispersed, so things have kind of leveled out, correct?
Yes, so the program has since closed. All payments have been received, at least with the Fighting Chance Fund. We're continuing constituent service and reporting. For staff are reaching out to recipients to follow up and conducting impact reporting at this time. So that has the platform has closed out within the Fighting Chance Fund, and now we're focusing more on integrating our upcoming grant programs within the OpenGov platform.
And this, Scott, this might be a question for you. There's always a balance between transparency, security, accountability. Can you talk about, I'm assuming some individuals probably don't want the public to know that they applied for some individual assistance.
Mhm.
So are there protections in place to make sure that, yes, the city has to let the community know that it dispersed X amount to an individual or a family, but that family perhaps doesn't want that information to get out?
Absolutely, and that's a good point. It is a balance, and there was a question from one of the audience members around the same topic. So each government has full discretion on what they share out to the public, Eric. So typically governments will have a much greater set of reports and data and dashboards that are internal focused, to help with decision making for analysis, when they're making recommendations to their executives. And then they can share any subset of that out to the public. So things like individual names can be scrubbed, but total dollar amounts dispersed through the Fighting Chance Fund can be pushed out. And that's typically how transparency worked with most of our customers. They'll have a much greater internal need and then just publish, whether it's budget related or financial, non-financial, subset of that out to the public.
Great. Kind of a different question, and this is, Sarah, you mentioned this, and it's dealing with how transferable this platform is to other functions of county government. You mentioned two, but you didn't mention them by name. So maybe the question is for Scott. Can you let us know about how, this is a very specific need for this program that the city created. What other functions does this platform lend itself to?
Yeah, and what's interesting is the primary use case for the platform we used for the grant management and the Fighting Chance Fund was around permitting, licensing, and code enforcement. So it's still, if you think about it at a high level, applications and workflows that you process. The big difference on that end is we take the payments. We also hook up to the GL to make sure that the transactions from PLC, permitting, licensing, code enforcement are handled. But since it's really like an automated workflow engine, we've used it for all types of different things. Coming to mind, capital project pre-screening for those governments that have big capital projects and they want to vet them in advance, or maybe even performance measure collection. So there's a lot of governments that want to track where they're going to go on their performance. So we can really automate any type of, if you want to look at it, form and workflow automation that governments need. I came from government myself, and big county in Maryland, and we had hundreds of forms online that were still like PDF based. So think about it from a larger perspective, those type of things that you want to automate and kind of see the efficiencies that St. Petersburg did.
What if a community has questions about the efficiency of their planning department, their building department, basically just in permitting?
Mhm.
Is that something that you guys can go in, evaluate the workflow and say, you know, perhaps you're inefficient here, here's some improvements. Actually, you do need more staff for this in order to be more responsive to, you know, flow of permit requests?
Exactly. And so in the video, you saw a bunch of dashboards that St. Petersburg used. Those can be used across any service area of government, right? So it can be applied directly to permitting, things like aging reports. Are you meeting your SLAs? How many inspections in past? How fast are your inspectors doing their job, right? So that data can be visualized and analyzed across both financial and non-financial data across any service area. So typically, you know, in our budgeting platform, it's all budget focused, right? How are you doing budget to actuals? With citizen services, it could be around grants, permitting, licensing, code enforcement. And then from financials, obviously, this is from a kind of CFO perspective. And the nice thing is you saw with them, they can set targets and trends. Someone mentioned the geolocation data is great. I use their example a lot and show how they distributed the grants throughout the city correctly. But you can also see, you know, from a permitting perspective, where you're issuing permits, licenses, and they use geographic data as well.
That's a perfect segue to the next question. And as a former planner, I saw that mapping tool and I thought that's very interesting. Have you seen any other community integrate that type of those pin drops with I'm thinking of communities who might do something for trying to develop a social vulnerability index, for example. So clearly, you know, folks that applied for individual assistance, whether it's through this program or through, you know, FEMA housing program after disaster, if you're able to map that, then you begin to get an indication of sort of what portions of the community are particularly vulnerable to different types of events, whether it's COVID or whether it's a hurricane or something like that, or any other type of planning need. I just see that being extremely useful for community planners. Have you seen that used anywhere else in the country where they've integrated that?
Yeah, broadly. I mean, we have about 1,000 customers right now. And they can use it to look at, you know, a section of their city. So if you want to look at like by district and see where you're putting dollars, what's the economic impact, mix that with demographic data and come to conclusions. So this is what OpenGov was built on. Whether in our case, we're talking about Fighting Chance Fund and how they distributed that evenly through the city, or you want to look at economic indicators across a county, city, state, and kind of find out where maybe your local governments are performing poor financially and there's some economic and non-economic factors contributing to it. With our model, Eric, you know, it's unlimited usage. So you can pull data from anywhere and have as much data in the system you want to help you make those decisions. So it doesn't just have to come from the city or county. It could be state level data that's helping you make decisions.
Yeah, like I said at the beginning, I thought this was just an amazing, robust platform, robust yet nimble and adaptable. And you know, Sarah, my last question was going to be: is the city, you know, going to go backwards? It doesn't sound like they're going to go backwards. It sounds like they're actually going to continue to go forward and actually to the sides and let other portions of the city use this tool. So we're kind of getting towards the end of the year. Folks are getting a little bit tired and asking questions and that sort of thing. Are there any other final comments that either Scott or Sarah you'd like to make before we wrap it up?
No, I'm just really excited to be a part of this project. It's been so transformational for our city. It's been a long time in the making to transition our old manual processes into this digital format, and this is just the beginning. So we're so thankful to have that partnership with OpenGov and help us help guide us over that step to take us further. So looking forward to 2021.
Agreed. And it's such a great partnership and a great story, as you mentioned, Eric. I mean, you really see it from beginning to end, how it helped them. So.
All right. Thank you so much for taking the time and coming on and sharing the story and the information. We certainly appreciate it, and hope you have a great and safe holiday.
Happy holidays, everyone.
All right. Thank you.
Bye bye.